Welcome to Luna Sands Music Videos Deconstructed, where we dive into the heart of your favourite music videos to explore their narratives, ideologies, and cultural impact. I'm Amanda Stephenson. I have a PhD in film and English, and I'm passionate about storytelling and representation. I'm joined by Gavin Fry, a filmmaker with over 20 years of industry experience, including the production of hundreds of music videos and many short films. Today, we're diving deep into Korn's Falling Away From Me, a powerful and haunting music video that explores the idea that music can help people overcome trauma and abuse. We'll be exploring its horror aesthetic, its resonance with audiences of the late 90s, and how its narrative connects with the band's broader message. We'll also look at how the representations reflect the time the video was made and how it might be interpreted or reimagined today. Let's get started. So I chose a Korn video,
Cool.
Falling Away From Me, which came out in '99. It would have been early 20s. I was listening to Korn since the first album in '94. And so as a teenager, I really loved them because there's a lot in there about like mental health and about just sort of dealing with different issues. Years ago, a friend who's not into metal at all, I was listening to Korn, and he said, "Does this not make you really angry?" And I was like, "No, it stops me getting really angry. It allows me to deal with my anger in positive ways." So that's one of the reasons I love Korn.
Yeah, I've never seen it. Um, it was doing a bit of what we were talking about last week in terms of performance and a narrative, right?
Yeah.
Like it's how you very roughly split that up. But they also have a thing that I used to call narrative performance.
Yes.
So I would have called the bit with the green stuff the main performance with the light bulbs and that would have been performance. Then the rest of the narrative would have been narrative specific, but then that bit where they actually bleed into the narrative would have been narrative performance, like in the bedroom and stuff. So yeah, if I was making that, there would have been three very distinct different things to construct and make.
Yeah, I do like the way that the blurring of those narratives, and having watched this after we made Dan's video,
Yeah,
I was like, has Dan seen this? Because he's got a similar thing going on with that as well, isn't he? It's
I think
like,
it's happened lots. Like, it's one of
yeah,
them things, isn't it, with music videos, is lots of themes repeat a lot because music and stuff, it's so universal, but then there are all these common universal ways of looking at it as well. And I think yeah, bands bleeding into the story within the narrative is just as common as any other pro
mm.
videos, I think. But yeah, yeah, go on. You tell me about this one.
So yeah, for me, I think there's quite a lot of connection with the lyrics. Um, if you look it up, there's different things that come up. So some people will say it's sort of the music about the music industry kind of treating them as products and things, which I think was going on around that time. But I think for the most part, there's the themes that he's got from his own childhood abuse, that he brings up into his songs all the time and has brought them up since first album, sort of 1994.
Yeah,
So
which
I,
is nothing to do actually with the music video in that way, is it? It's like the lyrics of the song are absolutely um about that stuff, right? Um and then do you feel that they took them lyrics and did a good music video with them lyrics?
I think it's quite a dark music video, isn't it? I think it's sort of trying to make people face the fact that abuse goes on behind closed doors. I think he did say at one point that the song's about domestic abuse. There are always ways to get help. Um, whether it's telling someone or calling a helpline, there's always ways to get out of that situation. No one needs to be treated like that. So I
Yeah,
think,
and that's the weird thing I saw in this is that the meaning and the message and the aim and the intention behind this stuff was so very genuine. It felt really
Yeah.
genuine. The 90s aesthetics contradicted that, unfortunately, in many ways. Because they even glamorized it in certain ways, the way it looked. They made like the way the guy was stood at the end, that looked like a horror movie, and it looked cool. It looked disturbing but cool.
Yeah.
I don't think a music video today made about the same subject matter would be done with them level of now looking back at 90s music videos.
That sort of stylization.
It's
That
on the
sort of,
nose again.
yeah.
It's on the nose. It's stylized. It's nowhere near like the Rodriguez one the other week. But again, it's not yeah, it's still very big, it's still very big production and it's still very bigly made and it's still which is at some points to me is a detriment, but only because I'm now looking back on something that's 30 something years old, whereas at its time, I'm sure the fact that it was the content of it was what it was doing that was really important and probably quite new at that time as well, in terms of actually talking about them things and having the balls to kind of,
Yeah.
mm, show that in a video.
Yeah. And I guess there's also the idea that it's sort of borrowing from those horror aesthetics, but in a way, one of the functions of horror films is that we sort of go in and we explore all these ideas in this sort of safe space. So all the different fears that come up in horror films, and it's like it sort of allows us to explore those deep-seated insecurities, and but in a way which isn't threatening. And I think in borrowing from the horror film, it's sort of asking people to identify with those issues and to think about those issues. But in a way, it's also saying this is a safe space. You can come out of this music video at the end of it.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, a bit like violence, even though, again, which action and violence and horror and I mean, I think all the, visual stuff is, metaphorical most of the time and not really and again create spaces for fantasy, imagination, all kinds of different spaces which you can just then leave behind.
mm,
It's always just whatever that line is, wherever and that's a really subjective hard thing because some things I've seen are horrifically violent, and you could argue that they glamorize it because the violence might be so well executed in certain ways. But it all depends on, I guess, intention, and this feels very authentically intended.
yeah.
I don't believe it was necessarily executed perfectly,
Hmm.
uh, and certainly not how it would be done now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It'd
but
be interesting to think how it would be done now.
yeah, there's no way I would shoot some like a girl getting beaten with them aesthetics. There's absolutely no way I could do that.
Yeah, because it removes you from the situation
But also
with,
it makes it dramatic and it's like watching a Hollywood movie about that kind of shit and it's kind of it's making it so unrealistic that its whole point of actually connecting people and talking to people going through them it goes too far.
mm,
Um, Um, I mean, I think superhero films do that. I think they lose a lot of their meaning because they go too far and too big. Um, but yeah, I certainly couldn't shoot. I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't shoot something like that now, like that, um, because times are different. And this is what's funny of looking through music videos of the past 30, 40 years while we've been watching them. Um, and they've changed so much, and I think one of the biggest ways is actually how from the way I look at music videos, it kind of from how they're aesthetically put together is one of the things that I think's changed so massively.
yeah. Yeah, and I think they've got the close-up shots of the girl, and so I think they are inviting you to identify with her and identify with all the other children in that way. So it's sort of, I think it's a
Oh,
nice message there in terms of coming together.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing that we were talking about the other day. Again, this is when someone's making something like this, telling that story, um, the fact that it's being attempted to be told by the point of view of that person,
Mm.
it's
Hmm.
not obviously exploitative. It's not, it's connecting you, it's putting you straight on side with that person. But as I was talking about Rodriguez and my and other things I've seen,
Yeah.
is that it just depends how disingenuous that is. And I don't mean disingenuous in the same way as we were talking about them other things like this would be. I just mean um, I can put you in the point of view of someone in a video.
Yeah.
That can be the point of view of a point of view which often hasn't been shown, hasn't been told. But my intention for doing so isn't always necessarily clear just in like the first watching of something for me. I've only seen that once.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's just, is it for narrative? If it is it for sort of
Cheap.
effect? Is it for the
Yeah.
narrative,
Is
or
it
is
cheap?
it because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um and I think it sort of comes down to, I guess, things although although people can be trying to do something that's challenging cultural stereotypes or trying to say something really important about society, nothing exists outside of the bubble that it exists in time-wise and space-wise. So there's things that will be unconsciously or, or consciously, but maybe, but sort of in there that might undermine certain aspects of the progressiveness, is I think what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think it's from my own experience of making cheap music videos is looking back on work. It's like I could show you a lot of them videos and I could say, look, it's from that point of view. Look, it's talking about a subject that isn't talked about. Look, I could argue so many, but then a lot of the time it was like, but that also made a super cool, maybe hyper exciting fantasy, sexual at times, or it's kind of, I still might be attempting to achieve all of them things through different ways, if that makes sense. And that's where the Rodriguez video was complicated, and even this video is complicated in a very
Mm.
different way. It's just more like you could look at the devices they use and go, they just want to tell that story and they don't want to tell it with actually that much depth or context. They actually want to show it very quickly in a few seconds, and it's very hard to actually express them kind of stories in such a minute amount of time. And
Yeah.
again, it comes back to that problem that I have with narratives and music videos, which is just they become cardboard cutouts. And then when they're talking about really serious subject matter, it becomes even more problematic in different ways because if it's a stupid narrative for a fun music video or a fun song, it doesn't really matter that much. But when you're dealing with strong, complex subject matter like this,
Hmm.
it's almost like if you take the performance out of the video, what is it, 5 minutes long, you take the performance out, maybe it's 2 minutes of narrative,
Hmm.
maybe it's like how you tell a story in a nuanced and important way in 2 minutes is a challenge. And I think there's probably only a few people and few things that ever achieve that, whether,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's where that stuff can always fall apart a little bit, I think.
It's
It's like a
also,
John Lewis.
sorry.
It's like a John Lewis advert, isn't it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I'm
Pull
this
at the heartstrings.
Well, yeah, and this one, like someone's come to me as a cinematographer or as a to break down the script and gone, right, we want to tell a story about a girl being abused by a dad at home, and it's kind of like, and then I just go, okay, that point, that point, that point, that point, you have to hit these three, four story points, get this shot, and it's kind of and then it's like a John Lewis advert for someone being abused, and then I look at it and I start to go, how nuanced is this? How willing is it to stop selling its music and to not be a music video? Is it to try and actually talk about the thing that it really wants to talk about?
But also, how much control did they have, which we won't know. We do know that he sort of complains about his record, or complains about the record label taking control. And I think him and Amy Lee from Evanescence um have been on, she's got on tour with, got not gone on tour with him, got on stage with him on tour. So I think they've got that in common because she had similar complaints. But
Oh
I
God,
wonder,
yeah.
it's about selling it and about the record pay company wanting to make money, and at the same time they're trying to express the lyrics. At the
Well, this
same
is
time, it needs to
always
go on MTV, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This is always the problem, right? With music videos, with art, with all kinds of things, commercial art. It's kind of you never know where the power is. You never know where the creative real influence is. You never know what's driven the decisions. And most of the time, if it is trying to make money, that will be the bottom line, even with big, massive acts most of the time, because even it's very few that have absolute complete power because you often have to suffer a bit financially for that.
Mm,
And and that's where again music videos, unless they are made by people who do not who are either too small for anyone to care about or don't care about making money or have made so much money they now don't care what happens. Like without kind of commercial freedom, I think all music videos and things are problematic
mm,
because yeah, it's like this video, it's like did they have to make sure though that they told this abuse story but in a way that it could play at a certain time on TV and stuff. So what did they cut? What did they choose to censor?
mm,
And maybe they should have just had a girl in a room just staring down a camera lens who actually had suffered it with just the song playing.
mm.
It's like now that wouldn't have been as good for MTV and it wouldn't have been as watchable and it would have been difficult, but it might have got the point of the song if that's what they were talking about across more. But
Well,
but who cares, right? If really it's the label, and from my experience, I've made a lot of music videos I've made which were absolutely nothing to do with me. My job was to figure out creatively how to tell them, but I was given lists, rules, all
mm.
kinds of things from record labels, the artists themselves, management, a mix of people. And it's very every now and again you get to work on or make something or see something where you're like, I think that was made completely how everyone wanted to make it, and to hell with everybody. Um, and
And
yeah,
sorry, what are you going to say?
no, that's it.
Um, yeah, I was just going to say. So when I was looking up the director, which is Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit, so apparently he spent a month in jail at the age of 20 for an altercation with his then partner. And then later on in 2007, he was given a suspended sentence for deliberately hitting another car with his just so he could start a fight.
Yeah,
And
I
that
mean,
that
it's not a
worried me.
surprise. It's not a surprise when you watch this video. I'm pretty sure that it was mostly men who made this, telling a young girl's story. I'm pretty sure that again, like I said, the weird juxtaposition of the aesthetics, of the rock band kind of cool bouncing guitar, but then with this horrendous actual narrative going on,
Yeah.
it was like only unaware people could do this. Not that it was badly intentioned necessarily at all. Some things might be absolutely sickeningly disingenuous. I don't think this was, but I
No,
can
I
see,
don't think so. Certainly not with the band, and not with what
yeah,
Jonathan Tate Davis
yeah.
says
But
about mental health and his own
no one
experiences.
was there. No one was there to go. No
Just
one put it to me when I made similar things. No one went, Gavin, the juxtaposition of this, oh, look how kind of cool or dark or wicked this performance is and how cool this looks
yeah.
this horrendous story that you're trying to tell from a kind of positive, at least, protagonist identifiable way. It's kind of like this is glorification, and you're using it being that kind of song or story or intention as with still just kind of appealing to that audience, But it's hard. It's like how many singers, they know what they should do. They should write a catchy 2-minute song. Um,
Mm.
but hardly anything good. And that's the thing, right? That's the problem with all these music videos, that all of them that we're going to watch, maybe
Yeah. It-
is that, yeah, it's kind of this has interesting aspects. It's better than a lot of videos that we could talk about in terms of its content. At least it's, trying to talk about interesting things. But
yeah.
it's the same way as which video did the Dunblane massacre? Was that an Eminem video or
Oh,
something?
I'm not sure.
Not the
Mm.
Dunblane massacre. I mean, the
The school shooting, Colorado,
Columbine one. Yeah,
Columbine. Yeah.
and tried to, explain that. But again, I find it difficult when songs are trying to sell loads of music and money, and they're using subject matters. Yeah, it's really, really tricky if we want to talk like that way about all of it. It's it's all really, really tricky. And that's why I think sometimes it takes people to be really brave to do stuff that's genuinely like impressive.
Mm. Yeah, and to get that done despite the financial constraints and the compromises that they probably would have had to make to get that done. And I think it was really popular on MTV at the time, so I think it was sort of after. Oh, and here's another cool fact about it. It premiered on South Park, this song. So before the actual video came out, I think they'd made an appearance in South Park as a sort of a touring band, and they played this song. So yeah, so it's sort of who's the audience as well, and I
Yeah.
guess it will be audience members that are familiar with the sort of genres that they're pulling from aesthetically, but it will also be people that are listening to metal for particular reasons. And I was listening to metal because it helped me to figure out who I was and to sort of express myself
Oh,
in ways I didn't
yeah.
know how to.
I mean, it's that subculture, right? And it's that, and it's kind of like there was a whole group of bands, things like South Park, metal, but also hip hop. There was this kind of real mixture of it, especially in the 90s and stuff, where there was that, um, Marilyn Manson, you know, in Bowling for Columbine. Have you seen? You've obviously
Yeah, I
seen.
have. Yeah, yeah.
Marilyn Manson is the only person in that whole film who is worth listening to. He's incredible. He's in it for like 2 seconds, and he's absolutely incredible. Um, what he says in it.
Yeah.
Simply about talking to the kids as opposed to, and again, I think it's funny that its aesthetics almost remind me of what were the vampire films called that were out like 10, 12 years ago?
Twilight?
Yeah, there's a certain kind of aesthetic with Evanescence as well, and not necessarily metal and not necessarily hip hop, not necessarily always exactly like the same genre, but there's a certain kind of aesthetic and there's a certain kind of thing. And and like you said, in South Park, we're absolutely part of that as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, sort of speaking to the right people.
I
And
mean, it's a kid, yeah.
I love the way I know the effects aren't great, but we are talking 99 and
Yeah,
yeah.
they don't date. They don't age.
Yeah, that no. But there's that idea of this energy coming from music, and I know Jonathan Davis does talk about his own depression and his own mental health and his own abuse quite a lot, and the way I
It's a
think,
beautiful idea.
yeah,
Again, that concept, the concept of, you know, taking power from, music and art, and because we do, and especially young people, it's like, God, that's where you try and get all of your strength and all of your, and that's why the videos, it does it ham-fistedly, it does it masculinely, it does it incredibly datedly, it does it in, what it's saying, that's beautiful.
mm.
You
And
just
I
wouldn't
love
you just wouldn't do it like that now.
I
That's
know, I
amazing.
know. I think my favorite bit is when she just opens the box at the end, and it's like, yeah, you can take this, you know, the energy that you get from music and that connection with people that you do feel like are genuinely expressing their inner turmoil, and you can box that all up and bring it out when it's needed. And it's like, I love that idea, and it's a very literal way of representing it, but I do love that idea.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's like again, that kind of yeah, it's cheesy is what it is, and it shouldn't be cheesy considering it's about that kind of subject matter, but it's kind of almost cheesy even though it's about that subject matter.
Yeah.
But and that's just what I mean by yeah, you would do it. You could do exactly the same concept now, and you can imagine, right, how it would look. It looks so different.
Maybe we
Yeah,
should do it. I'll
it'd be
record the song.
it'd be washed out more.
Mm,
The look of it, it'd be weird, more handheld and really shallow focus on things. It's almost like, but then in 20, 30 years, people would look at that and be like, and that's the thing with all of these things is they get,
you're part of your time, and you can only do the best that you can think of in the time that you're in, with the knowledge that's around you and the awareness or that you have with ideology, and how you can
so the
sort of
fact that this
navigate
still
that.
got made by a
Yeah.
big band, a big labels, big TV things, a big directors, the fact that it still got made and at least it wasn't just another one of them videos which just was just the status quo,
Hmm.
which 99% of stuff is. It's actually indecipherable to the moment of culture that it's in.
Yeah.
Whereas this has, like you said to me a time when we spoke, this is a nugget. So this, even though it's caught up in so many of them things, it does, at least it isn't just them rocking out and something absolutely pointless happening. It is at least, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think you could go into how it was done, why it was done in lots of different ways, but I mean, at least
It,
they were trying, right?
yeah, that's kind
Yeah,
of my thinking, and just, yeah, trying to
yeah.
express yourself. And it where those animation graphics at the beginning, they're actually the animation graphics at the end of Freak on a Leash. I don't know if you've seen Freak on a Leash. That's another one for another day, where there's a just it is all animated. Well, there's a performance element as well, but it's animated, and a gun goes off and sort of passes through a girl, then it passes into the real life. And and when they've got that performance, it looks like the same studio, but actually instead of all those lights hanging from the ceiling, they've got bullet holes, what tiny, like thousands of holes in the backdrop with lights behind it. And so it's sort of interesting going from, because it's very clearly supposed to be a follow on, because otherwise why would you use that animation graphic to link the two? But you go from all the bullet holes to all the lights, so sort of the darkness and the light, and kind of finding the light and finding the light through music. And yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to know with linked things how much it was done at the time and it was a genuine kind of plan of them things, or how much something was done and then when they decided to do a new thing, they found a way of connecting the two.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. It's like when they make that in films, it's like were they written as a trilogy or as a two films, or was one written and then you wrote another one, but figured out a way of making it kind of connect to the other one, even though that wasn't really the intention in the first place. So
Yeah.
it's hard to know that stuff. And I obviously haven't seen them, but I know that both are possible. It's possible to take a video, have not made the video before it, and for someone to say, I want there to feel like this is a flow into the another act, into another chapter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they were from the same album as well. And so I think it was the Issues album, which was 99, which sort of tells us, you know, tells us something about the content in and of itself.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, there's no denying that with it's easier with musicians than it is with music videos. But with musicians, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's always musicians that want to talk about certain things, and others that want to talk about other things, and others that talk about absolutely nothing. And yeah,
Yeah, and I guess and then we've got ideas about record labels, and it's different now because people are more self-producing and things, but that idea of record labels, um capitalizing on the pain of others, and so that's like, yeah, express yourself and get it all out so we can make money. There's just this, yeah, there's this weird dichotomy there, I think. But it's been really lovely talking about this with you, and thanks for taking the time to chat with me about one of my favourite bands and one of my favourite videos. This has been really great, and thanks to anyone listening. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.